Hey everybody, welcome back to Twin Oaks Farm Poultry on YouTube. I'm Melissa, we're in the meat bird production barn, and we are doing a bonus clip for day 23. We're still on day 23 of production from our flock that we're raising for poultry. So it's day 23 of production out of 42 days of production, and we're just rolling right along. But this bonus clip video is for us to be able to take a look back at the production board and talk again a little bit about production costs and profitability and the different motivations and intrinsic values for doing this, because this is not on the scale of like industrial chicken farming, and at that scale you can do a lot more things at bulk pricing, and you can do a lot more negotiating, and you can kind of drive some of the production costs down. But on this scale, when this is small production, you really don't have that negotiating power. You don't have a way to drive a lot of costs down. You have to work with what the economics are and do your best. So that's what we do here. But we want to take a look at that, and then we will get to look in on some close-ups of some individuals in the flock, and hopefully we'll get to step around the corner to the chicken shack, the meat house, the freezer house, where we keep the poultry products that we get from these birds. So we're actually going to start right in. We're going to move over here to our production board, but here's some close-ups on our flock. This is about the best it's been all day for them. We're recording at about 6 p.m. It's 75 degrees, so this is the warmest it's been for them all day. And this is really the perfect temperature for this age bird. The temperature they want to have in their environment is really specific to the age and stage of growth that they're in. And at 23 days, our point of reference is they really do want to be around 75, low 70s. So this is ideal. And then even here you can see where we've got a strong contrast. We've got a strong contrast in the lighting. So on one side, it's dark and shaded, and on the other side, we've got sunlight streaming in from a door on the west side of our building. We're late in the day. So there's a little more activity where there's bright light. And you can also see, like, we just had one running from the dark side of it over to the brighter side. But that's a trigger right there. If you have a lot of birds that'll posture at each other, I'm not saying that's what's going on in your environment, but that's a trigger that will get birds to do that and posture at each other and look like they're going to fight whenever there's a transition from strong light to dim light, and anytime it changes. So, sometimes even right now, like the cloud cover might cover the solar energy and change the lighting there, and we see a difference in the birds. So let's go over the production board though. Let's go over the production board. And so it's like I tell my teenage sons, which some of them are older than, well, one's older than teenage now, the cooler you are, the slower you roll. So we rolled up here slow to the production board to let the camera kind of take a moment to focus in, but here we are. So this hasn't changed. We showed this running total cost on this flock several days ago in one of our broiler videos, production videos, and it has not changed. We bought 2/3 of our feed ahead of time. So until we hit 40 bags of feed, and we've only fed out at this point not quite 20, about 25 bags of feed. So no, I take that back. We fed out 21 bags of feed because I have 19 to go to get to 40. So till we hit that, feed is covered in this cost. But we're going to exceed that at some point because we expect to feed 60 bags of feed out. We're also at some point going to have to buy more shavings because we've put 15 bags down in the pen, and I have 5 on hand, I believe, but we're going to probably need more. So we're a little bit ahead of the game here on this running total, which when we divided it by 301, works out, divided it by the number of birds we have, works out to $4.65 a bird. So at this point in production, and feeding ahead 19 bags and putting down 5 more bags of bedding, every bird you see here Every bird so far has cost us $4.65. And on that $4.65, we can still feed them a little longer and put fresh bedding down for them a little longer. So that's great. That's great. But what's the difficulty and what's the truth that we have to acknowledge about that equation? Well, here we go again. The difficulty that we have to acknowledge about this equation is, first of all, this number's not done. It's going to go up. That number's going up. The other difficulty we have to acknowledge is this number, the number of individuals in the flock. Well, that could go down. That could go down. And that's the reality we have to acknowledge in any livestock meat production operation, production ag operation. Death prior to processing is a legitimate concern, and it happens. And it doesn't matter whether it's cattle or pigs or chickens or whatever. Every time an animal dies, the average production cost of every other animal you're raising just increased. So in our chicken flocks, every time a bird dies, whether it got turtled or failure to thrive or heart failure or leg failure and can't get to food and water, every time a bird dies, the average production cost of every other bird in that flock just increased. And so obviously, as a producer, we want to keep all the birds living. All the birds living. Nobody's dying until processing day. That's what we want. That's what we try to work toward and try to manage for. So we want to keep that number up. But if that number decreases, then average production cost increased. And so what impacts production cost? Well, those two things. I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question, right? Because I already answered it. What two things impacts production cost? The things that we have on the board and the things that we've just been talking about. The two things that impact production cost are, of course, spending money. That impacts production cost. It drives it up. And the other thing that impacts production cost is the number in the flock. We want to keep that number up because every time that number drops, cost goes up. So those two things impact production costs severely. Now, in our case, as I pointed out the other day, this line per bird average projected processing. We project, this line is for processing alone, $1,800 at the processor if we're at around 300 birds for a custom order. $6 a bird. So best case scenario right now, but that's going to go up because this is going to go up because we got to go out to day 42. But best case scenario right now is our birds cost us $10.65 a piece to produce. Truth is, at the end of it all, I'm going to estimate for you with the other production costs that are going to go in, our birds are probably going to cost us $16 to $17 to produce. So I sparked a little bit of discussion. Whatever video that was, I should have looked it up and been able to tell you what day that was on. But I sparked a little bit of discussion with saying, what our production costs were. We're going to go into the freezer house. So I sparked a little bit of not controversy, conversation. We get along around here. I sparked a little bit of conversation with that. And one thing was, it'd be nice for production costs to be so low. It is, but remember, it's not going to stay there. It's gonna get worse, basically. But what else? Going back to what we said, what else impacts production cost? Well, number of birds, and that's the tricky thing with poultry. The tricky thing with poultry is, and could be with any animal, but if you have loss in your flock, you're probably not going to have just a little loss. It's very likely to have a lot of loss. And the industry, expected flock loss prior to processing in the United States of America for any level of poultry producer is like 20 to 30%. So you're talking about 20 to 30 out of every 100 birds potentially. Why is that? That's because conditions affect flocks. Conditions don't affect individuals. So when we have a bird turtle or we have a bird failure to thrive, that could be an individual. But when we have conditions that could cause the onset of heart distress and leg problems and pathogens, that doesn't affect individuals, that affects flocks. And so if we have that going on in the flock, and it could be out of our control. It could be weather conditions. It could be things that happened in incubating before hatching out at the hatchery. It could be beyond our control. But if it affects the flock, we could lose a lot of birds. And if we lose a lot of birds, that's going to dramatically drive up production costs. But let's finish with looking at some great products that we get from poultry. So these two freezers are empty. This is from our July poultry that we had made. Everything before that sold out. Most of this is sold, and we expect poultry back again mid-October. So this is a whole chicken cut up into 8 pieces, popular product. And whole chicken right there, 4.29 pounds. That's our last whole, left whole from July. So, you know, those go well. Chicken wings, there's probably 8 in a pack of those. Chicken breast, we can get you a look here, hopefully. Chicken breast. This, I'm going to bring this over here because of the sunlight. Ground chicken patties. These are made from thighs and drumsticks. So, and then, you know, we've got some gizzards here. We keep a thermometer in there. You want to monitor the temperature of your freezer. There's a nice 8-piece, 4.63 pound finished out chicken. So we're going to close that up. Oh, and drumsticks. How about them? Love those. 4-pack. So it's a lot of choices. If you go to a processor and get custom cuts, you can get a lot of choices for your birds. Chicken hearts. We have a customer who loves the chicken hearts. So anyway, so there's some wonderful products. And you can do that for your own household consumption or to sell. And we've been able to cover all of the costs of production and a small profit margin with our flocks. So it is doable. It is doable. I figure if we can do it, anybody can do it. So God bless y'all. Thanks for joining us. Join us again. And we really appreciate you. Thanks for supporting our channel.